I think uniquely provides that any individual who does not want that portion of his dues which goes to political ends can have that money refunded, and there is spelled out a procedure by which he can do that. And if Mr. McNamara and his associates had wanted to avail themselves of that, they were then free to do so. They are now free to do so.
Is it the operation of the Community Action Program to back political candidates?
Oh, the Community Action Councils at the local level and at the state level do make political endorsements and do, as part of their general activity, become involved in political campaigns, yes.
But isn't there an illegality involved when they back the campaign of federal or national candidates?
Only if they use dues money for that purpose.
But that's where they get their money from.
No. We have what we call dollar drives every year. And the purpose of those dollar drives, because that's freely donated money, is to raise what we call free money that can be used in federal campaigns, whether it be for the presidency or for the Senate or for the House of Representatives.
We will be selling Dallas-Fort Worth and products from this area. We have appointments with a very high-level group. We have the Japan Southern U.S. Association, who we will meet with. These are the industrial leaders of Japan. We hope that from our visit will come a greater friendship with the Japanese, that will make it easier for future individuals or missions from Dallas-Fort Worth to sell in Japan.
Well, Senator Proxmire has been fighting the SST program very vigorously right along. I'm not competent to judge whether the scientific assertions that there'd be an uprush in skin cancer are well-founded or not. My concern has been more on the economic end of it. The airlines industry is in great difficulties. That industry is not absorbing the 747. It's going to have difficulty absorbing the DC-10 and the L-1011. And to put on top of that, the SST, until certain other things get straightened out, did give me, as one individual, great concern.
Does the aerospace arm of the UAW need the SST in order to maintain its stability?
There are some locations that are under contract with the UAW where the continuance of the SST program was of great importance to the members there.
There's little doubt that this hospitalization had a definite effect on the recommendations returned by the Executive Committee. The Commission had no knowledge that Mr. Coffey was hospitalized or even ill at the time it issued its initial statement Monday. And while the Executive Committee yesterday still received the complete report of its General Counsel, certainly it gave considerable weight to Mr. Coffey's illness, inability to appear in person, and I'm confident that weight modified the recommendations it returned.
El Centro says they're administering student loans, but strangely enough, the College Coordinating Board in Austin says they're not getting any money from the state. I talked by telephone to a board representative in Austin this morning. She told me El Centro students are more than 13% delinquent in repaying those student loans, which are financed by the state. The board says anything over 10% delinquency is automatically cut off. And I also talked to El Centro Dean of Students, Dr. Don Kramer, who says this is not the first time it's happened to Texas colleges.
Well, this has happened to us about 4 or 5 times. We don't quite understand why these releases are made the way they are, but I can't explain the delinquency publishing.
Is there any action being taken to bring the list up to date, or to force the College Coordinating Board to bring their list up to date and not get you in trouble like this?
Well, I understand there's a great deal of concern on the part of other administrators at this college, the state financial aid associations, the other administrators of colleges throughout the state who feel that this entire matter is being handled in a way that could stand some improvement, and that conversations are being held all the time with the coordinating board and with the legislature. And in fact, apparently the legislature is holding hearings with the coordinating board to discuss what their alternatives are for solving this problem.
In the meantime, how does this affect students who need financial aid?
Well, it could affect them very seriously. It turns out that so far we've not been able to, or we have been able to make loans to our students, and as far as I know, no one has really suffered because of these kinds of reports. It creates a rather strange public image, however, and every time one of these reports comes out, the students call us in great numbers and wanting to know if that means them. And so it hits them pretty hard.
Prosecution, actually.
Well, Vern, as you know, we didn't play that well last night, but must give full credit to Omaha. I thought they played a super game, probably their best game against us all season, despite the fact that they were lacking a few of their key personnel due to the fact some trades and the loss of DuPont to New York Rangers.
Were you at all upset, given the importance of the game for Dallas, the lack of productivity on the part of the Blackhawks?
Yes, I was, very much so, Vern. A game that meant so much to them. The effort that we got out of a number of our players was very limited due to the fact it was an important game. It would have put us in a tie for Fort Worth, and if I thought we could beat Oma at any time, I thought it would be last night. But the effort wasn't there, and they just certainly weren't up, and I don't know whether they're kind of keyed up for the 2 games with Fort Worth, which is naturally going to decide, and we must win both games if we're going to retain second place and the extra game in the playoffs.
And of course, the loss last night really just made your position going into these next 2 games that much more difficult. You have to win them both.
Well, we still had to win them both regardless. This is why I'm not overly upset, and we have to win them anyways, because if we win them, we'll end up 2 points ahead of Fort Worth, and I think that we are capable of winning our last 2 remaining games to stay 2 points ahead of Fort Worth. But after all, Fort Worth has been a tough club for us all year, and we certainly have our work cut out for us.
You know, Bobby, I remember about a month ago when we did simultaneous conversations with you and Bob Lemieux, and you at that point were guessing ahead to the end of the season. And if I recall, you said you thought that Dallas would finish 1 point ahead of the Wings and about 6 ahead of Oklahoma City, and your projection really hasn't been that far off.
No, it hasn't. I think that we've lost 1 game that's really hurt us, where the fact that we could have still been tied and still ended up 1 or 2 points ahead of Fort Worth. I still think it can be if we have a maximum effort from everybody and we get some great goaltending. I think that we still have a chance. I know our fellas are keyed for the game with Fort Worth, as Fort Worth will be for us, and I think if we play as well as we did the last time in their building, I think we can win, and it's going to be a tough game for both clubs, and a hard-fought game in both games, and we just hope that we can come out the best for wear.
Well, Jerry, the big thing this weekend is we have to cut down basically on any mistakes that we've been making in the past. This is naturally the key to whoever finishes in second place, in my estimation. The Hawks have a very tough hockey club, and they've been tough on us all year, and we've had to play some good hockey games to pick up points from them. I think both clubs are going to be very high, and I think it's going to be mistakes. They have a lot of young hockey players. We have a lot of young hockey players, and I think if these kids can keep from making the mistakes, the team that makes the fewest mistakes has got to be the team that's going to come out on top in the weekend.
How many fans will you crowd into Will Rogers?
Well, we estimate for tomorrow night's game, Friday night's game, approximately 6,500. I would have to think that Dallas would put 7,500 or 7,800, maybe even 8,000 in their building for Saturday night's game. When they were making up the schedule in last summer in July, they couldn't have paired off 2 teams any better than they have for this series, and it's just a tremendous finish. It's great for hockey, and it's going to be a very interesting weekend.
The Journal of Air Law and Commerce Symposium, held today at SMU, addressed itself to the problems of general aviation. General aviation being defined as that segment of flying other than airline and military. One of the topics that arose numerous times during the day concerned aviation insurance. Attorney Tom Davis from Austin addressed himself specifically to that problem.
They use such words as a current and effective pilot certificate, and then argue that by effective pilot certificate they mean that you must have a medical, because your pilot certificate is not effective unless you have a medical. Or they will say properly certificated under the FAA regulations, or a properly licensed pilot, and such words as that, when they could very well say that anyone who flies this airplane must have a pilot certificate and a current medical. I mean, it sounds simple, but I haven't seen a policy yet that says it that simply.
It's a matter of recourse here from other people who've ever tried to read an insurance policy. Do you really understand an insurance policy when you read it? I know many people
Well, I maybe understand a little more of it than I did, but honestly, there are some provisions in insurance policies that for the life of me, I can't figure out why they're in there, and I rather suspect that the people that write the insurance don't know either.
One of the aviation insurance industry spokesmen was Mr. George Whitehead, who is the Vice President of United States Insurance Underwriters Group.
Saving lives, we feel, is a twin obligation with compensating people after they are killed. And the exclusions have a very strong safety purpose in the policies. I think they're clear and understandable. And of course, if they are ambiguous, the courts are going to construe them against the insurance company, so they would, in those circumstances, would be worthless.
I'm not a boss in that sense. We have a very egalitarian type of faculty, and we sort of rule the school by faculty committee. I don't consider them under me. If anything, I am their servant.
And in the red ring, the winner in the gold corner, Gene Stevens of Louisville. Bout number 8 in the red ring. In the red corner, Tom Cisneros of Salt Lake City, Utah. In the gold corner, from Des Moines, Iowa, Richard Gellerman. Your official referee, George Ryder. Here in the blue ring, your referee now, John Papa.
No, it's costing a little more on a week-to-week basis to run your household than it did 3 months ago, a year ago.
But not as much as it has been costing. The
But
increase
not
is not
it hasn't been increasing as fast as it was. That's what I think, that's a kind of good news that we're seeing here for the last 2 or 3 quarters.
What kind of forecast can you make for the future based on the last several months when the rise hasn't been as high as it
You
usually
can't
is?
really forecast the movement of any prices. Too many things are involved in people's decisions about what to do about prices. I think it is true that we are seeing price rises now in industries which tend to tag along and raise their prices late in the business cycle. But what that means, your guess is as good as mine.
A 4-year-old boundary dispute between the cities of Hearst and Colleyville in northeast Tarrant County is close to an end. The Texas Supreme Court is expected to rule in the dispute next Wednesday. About 1,200 residents north of Grapevine Road are affected in the dispute. Hearst annexed about 5 square miles of land adjacent to Colleyville on the west. Colleyville challenged that annexation and won the suit in the state Supreme Court, but Hearst asked for a rehearing, which is now pending. About 100 residents within the disputed area have petitioned Colleyville for annexation. I asked Colleyville City Administrator Randall Benson why.
Well, the reason probably is that Colleyville has no property tax, and also we are not restrictive on our regulations as Hearst is.
Will Colleyville fight Hearst for this property?
Yes, our city council has stated to our attorney to take all necessary actions to make sure that we get this property back.
A few of the petitioners own property which is split by Hearst and Colleyville city limits. Even some of the houses are divided. One resident, Faye Miller, says she will move if Hearst wins the suit. Will you stay here?
I don't think I would.
Why not?
Well, because of the high taxes in Hearst and then the restrictions on different things.
Hearst City Attorney Tom Cave told me there is an alternate plan to obtain annexation rights, even if the Supreme Court rules against Hearst.
Probably the best alternative under the circumstances would be for Hearst to file under Article 970A, the Municipal Annexation Act, an action in the District Court in Tarrant County for a judicial apportionment of the disputed property.
In other words, an apportionment which would assign certain property to Hearst and other property to Colleyville.
Right.
Similar annexation problems have occurred in other mid-cities in the past. This one could turn out, with all the disputed area, returned to Tarrant County. Jim Green, Channel 8 News on the Move, Hearst.
My relationship with Judy is one of total commitment, which includes physical relationship and working together on our purpose of finding God or our souls. My relationship with my wife, Rita, now is we might say, a mutual helping brother-sister relationship. And we're committed to one another to help each other grow in every way we can. And the three of us work together. But the relationship Judy now is a monogamous relationship, which is something the church court never bothered to ask about. They simply took it for granted that there were three of us sleeping together in the same bed or some foolish thing such as that.
But that is not the case.
It's not the case at all.
And that has not been the case at any time during this.
No, it has not. As this is, our relationships are very different. My relationship to Rita is completely different from my relationship to Judy.
You kind of have to admire that malt for its perseverance and sincerity, and you have to pity it for its ineffectiveness. And that's pretty much the way I feel about Judge Sterrett.
Judge Sterrett has characterized legal services as being anti-establishment, whether they're pro-poor people or not. How would you characterize it?
Well, the establishment always has to define itself. We are only lawyers, and we only represent our clients and their interest. If the impediments to legal justice for our clients happen to be institutions and agencies that are in violation of the law, and those institutions and agencies characterize themselves as the establishment, well, to that extent, we're going to be anti-establishment.
Could Jim Hatter and I pack up our gear right now and go out to a family and somewhere in Dallas who's hungry, and would they tell us that they were hungry and what we could do to help them?
I don't know, you know, if you and Jim would go out, I think if you would say, well, Reverend Johnson sent me, or Peter Johnson sent me, or somebody that they would identify with, they may even sit down and discuss all their problems with you, just with, you know, but just for you to go out with a camera and say, we want to talk to you about you being hungry, you may get run out of the neighborhood, because there's a superficial pride embedded in the poor.
We must begin the task of congressional redistricting by beginning in the urban centers and working out into the rural countryside. It means, for example, in my judgment, that congressional redistricting, such as was accomplished in 1967, would not meet the test. I know it's difficult. It is difficult for us in the Senate and Reapportionment Committee to be concerned with the metropolitan areas at this point, because, as we know, the Highway Department is coming forward with some maps that will be workable. It'll make it easier for us to work with.
And all isn't going to have but 24 congressmen. So it means almost as much as 1/8 of the people that one state representative here in Dallas County would have to cover, that is, in trying to represent, in trying to meet their needs, and trying to help them solve their problems. And I think that is a physical impossibility.
I think that it is obvious that among those present this morning that the overwhelming majority supports the concept of individual member districts.
I've read the newspaper accounts that the Speaker's losing popularity with the House. I've heard about it over the radio and TV, but I haven't seen that shown in the House. If you analyze the 30 votes which were for the Farenthold resolution, and all the resolution was to create an investigation committee headed by Ms. Farenthold and Representative Curtis Graves out of Harris County, you analyze those 30 votes, and those votes are votes that the Speaker wouldn't get under any circumstance. In other words, it's a coalition of the Republican delegation in the House, which has 10 members, and 7 of those people are from Harris County, and approximately anywhere from 20 to 24 votes on the liberal Democratic side. And when I say that, I mean the people such as Ms. Farenthold, or Curtis Graves, or Dave Allred out of Wichita Falls, or Lane Denton out of Waco. And these people, for political reasons, for their own political philosophy, wouldn't agree with the Speaker under any circumstance.
Yes, the two main provisions, one preventing members of the legislature from appearing and practicing before the boards, and the other, of course, is to reveal and make the public disclosure of your sources of income, the stock purchases you make, all the investments and divestments. Those are the two main features. Now, the first feature was wounded a little last week by an amendment that allowed a legislator's law firm to continue to practice. I fought this amendment, but it finally went on. And at that time, because the group who really opposed an ethics bill had so much momentum going, I moved to lay it on the table for fear that they would go on and take the public disclosure aspect out of it. At this time, the bill still has the provision that prevents a legislator from exerting undue influence directly on a member of a state board or agency, and the public disclosure is still in the bill. I will call the bill back from the table Monday and start back through the process of fighting off crippling amendments to the bill.
There are two hospitals that have applications in the process. These two hospitals have not heard from their monies, and they do not know the status of the applications, but they need this money for constructions. Their applications have been presented to the Application Review Committee out at COG, and the needs have been determined, and we hope that they will get the monies.
Wherever we can, we like to give them what they would like to have, but there's a valuable amount of space out at Love Field, and we can't make one big cab stand out of Love Field. But we did give them, I am recommending that McGrady give them, Mr. McGrady, the Director of Aviation for Love Field, recommending that he give them one stand, so that when they do go out to Love Field to deliver passengers, they do not have to deadhead back to downtown.
Reactions. We're happy about getting 3 spaces in front of the general luggage wing. We're not too happy about not having space in front of Braniff, but we're happy to be in Love Field. We're not allowed there. Up to now, we haven't been allowed there. We now can get some cabs in and maybe start moving some people out, and that's what we've been after.
Do you intend to press for more space at Love Field in the future?
We'll see how the space now allotted to us, or if the recommendations carried out, is utilized, and if we think it's justifiable, we'll ask for more space.
This condition was discovered by a team of medical doctors who are missionaries last summer, and working through our missionary office, the Southern Baptist Area Missionary Office in El Paso, they made arrangements to bring him out to El Paso, and he flew American Airlines to Dallas, and Mr. Harold King, who's a building contractor in Fort Worth, is flying him to Charles City, Iowa for the surgery. They apparently will try to save the sight in his left eye. I don't think they have any hope of saving the right eye, but it requires surgery to prevent rupturing. The left eye, I understand they will attempt to do a cornea transplant.
Are you of the opinion now that the state of Texas will reapportion on single-member districts?
Not necessarily. I think we're going to consider it. We're still in the process of gathering information. Now, the predominance of the recommendations here today were very strong in this direction, and the only alternative that was discussed, I believe, was that we might break down into some multi-member districts, let us say maybe 6 members in a district, and that would give Dallas County 3 6-member districts rather than one at-large 18-member district like you presently have.